Hey guys, this is Ben Sulsky, Sauce123 for 101s.com. Today I'm here with Patrick, PSEC1, and we are going to be reviewing a recent session of Patrick's footage playing, is this 1-2? Yeah, 1-2.
Yeah, a mix of 1-2 and 2-4.
Okay, so who's this player? Jana.
Okay, we should have probably begun with that actually, just my general labeling system, so that would just help us, understand. But so yellow and orange are just regulars, and then green is like recreational, light blue is kind of somewhere in between a recreational and a regular. And then that covers pretty much everything, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
There's not too many deviations from that.
Okay.
So this Jana Garbo guy will be a regular.
So already seeing this hand, do we expect Jana to be playing a cold call range as part of their basic strategy, or do we think that's an adjustment to having the green labeled player in the big blind?
I would expect it to be an adjustment probably. In my HUD, there's actually cold call stats, and yeah, it seems like he has like a 3% small blind cold call range. The vertical pop-up on the right of the main HUD will sort of show you the cold call stats by position. But yeah, 3% cold call, so I can kind of expect that he doesn't normally, but he includes one in order to, try and play more pots with weaker players would be my best guess.
Yeah, I agree with that interpretation of the stats. So, given that's the case, how do we feel about this board?
I think that we probably end up actually having a 7x advantage as well as an overpair advantage here, being in the cutoff. Maybe that would be different if we were under the gun or something. But we probably get to bet quite aggressively, although kind of polarized would be my assumption, because he's got like a condensed weaker range. So it will still probably push okay equity versus like our entire range. But I expect that, we won't necessarily want to sort of range bet this board, probably want to polarize a little bit.
Yeah, I understand that take. I'm trying to think of it at a little bit more of a granular level too, because we've already arrived at sort of a low frequency situation, and sometimes in these situations where tough regular is developing a cold call range for a specific reason, it's possible for us to gain extra EV when sort of the player that they're targeting, the weaker player, is out of the pot. So I think the first thing that I would try to nail down, which I think you already said implicitly, is that this is unlikely to be an uncapped range. So there are players, like if there's a weak enough player in the big blind, it's not unreasonable to be flatting your entire range from the small blind, particularly if they're aggressive squeezers. But I think we both agreed that that's probably not the case here.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he was flatting entire range. It's probably, just it's like slightly capped, I would guess, in like terms of pre-flop, but relatively strong overall still.
Like ace queen off probably is in there some frequency, or do you think that's not in there?
Yeah, I would expect some ace queen off, some of the suited connectors, and maybe even like jacks and tens sometimes. But probably quite a decent chunk of the middling pairs and some of the suited broadways, maybe some like ace 4 type hands suited. So yeah, just a bit of everything, I would guess.
Yeah, and what are the stats on the big blind again?
So it looks like he is not that terrible, if I use that phrasing. But it seems that he has, if I can just see here, 23 VPIP, I think, and 10 PFR and 0% 3-bet. So yeah, I think it's like increases the likelihood that he is playing more of a kind of vacuumy kind of range, because the big blind's unlikely to be extremely aggressive in this spot.
Yeah, so a rational regular in this situation is going to be adjusting by playing a wider than normal VPIP range from the small blind, and by playing one that's more capped and weak, basically. In other words, it's because the big blind probably isn't squeezing nearly enough, and probably just isn't even V-pipping nearly enough. So in a lot of ways, the small blind regular can be playing this spot more like the big blind against an RFI. Obviously not, because the price is different, because there's still a player behind, but this is a spot where I'd be looking to, again, the rate kind of muddies the waters a little bit in terms of what we should be doing, but like at least relative to normal, I would be looking to play more hands and be looking to play more passively. So I think nice play already by Jaina to construct a cold calling range with this distribution of players. And then I would think it should be relatively weaker, but also I think that it's easy to find nut hands on this board within the cold call range. Like I think like a hand like A7 suited and I think down to 7-6 suited are all going to be V-pips here, and they should all be mixing a higher frequency call. So I'm just seeing this as a spot where ranges are like relatively equal strengths. And with your hand, I don't have an obvious. I mean, I think I would like be wanting to invoke another argument or principle in order to decide whether I wanted to see bet or not here. Maybe like looking at global like fold to see bet stats for this regular would make it an easier decision. Or you could just randomize depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's fair. For what it's worth, I do have a randomizer that I use, but it's off screen during this footage. But yeah, I think that would be mostly how I approach that spot with a combo like this, at least.
Right. Like this combo both benefits from flop folds, but it also can easily play a check behind. I don't think this is a spot where we want to be c-betting 100%, so we don't really have any slam dunk play here.
Yeah, I agree. I have no idea what I did.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's probably a good thing, because there's... Yeah. Went with the check.
I want to apologize in advance for my mouse movements. They're quite erratic, but yeah.
No worries. All right, and then looking at this turn, again, I think it's a turn card that is overall better for his range, but again, one where you're going to have many improves. So it's like there's going to be a lot of EV to both sides on this card, and I could see our opponent choosing a variety of different bet sizes on the turn.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the lens that I would be taking here on the turn would just be like, the more frequently you think he's V-pipping fours through deuces pre-flop, the higher the frequency I'd bet this turn. And generally, threshold-wise, I think ace-6, not that you ever have that from the cutoff, so it's kind of irrelevant, but like, I think you need to have some single spade bluffs on the turn in order to uncap your range for the river, and you want to draw those from your weakest offsuit aces. So in the cutoff, that's with this weaker big blind, I would guess that's going to be ace of spades 9.
Yeah, ace spade 8, ace spade 9, something around that region, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm looking to bluff a high frequency with those combos, and I don't think ace queen or ace king are ever going to mix in a bluff region. I mean, for them to like effectively not get called by worse, they'd have to be betting really big, and they're still probably checking back the river anyway, right? So yeah, so I think with this hand, I would be mixing check behind and like bet like $4 or something, and trying to mix it in with my Jack X range, and then looking to often follow through in the river with it. That's kind of like how I'm looking at the spot.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Going back to the ace 8, ace 9 discussion, I think they're quite decent flop C bets actually. So I don't know how often that we are going to arrive at this turn with them. Like, how many like overall combos? I mean, we'll arrive with some. I assume we'll mix them on the flop. I think they might end up getting bet more than this exact combo we have. That'd be my guess.
I agree with you. I think like Pio would be mixing all of those combos with a high frequency, just because it really wants to protect itself from counter exploitation by like having the card ranks too obvious?
Yeah, no, that's yeah.
So let's see what you do. Okay, looks like we're on the same page here. Works for me. Also, I mean, this is kind of a small thing, but it seemed like the Janus check on the turn was like relatively quick and in tempo, which I think in general is going to make their range a little bit weaker on average and a little bit less likely to check raise, like a little bit more linear. Because oftentimes if you have a strong hand on this run out, it's difficult to figure out what frequencies you're going to lead versus check raise. Whereas if you have, sort of medium strength hand like pocket sixes or something, checking is really easy to do in tempo and be confident in, I think.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good observation. I think that, people's checking timings are probably more telling than their betting timings, actually.
Yeah.
In a spot like this, at least.
So we have sort of a slower but relatively in tempo check call on the turn. And I'm feeling pretty reluctant to bet this river, mostly because I think the 6 plausibly improves some combos. Like I think 6-5 suited is in there some amount pre-flop, although they might fold that depending on how they're playing. And then a lot of the region that's check calling turn and check folding on this river is going to be small blind, like flat call hands, like a hand like ace 10 off potentially, but particularly ace queen should be a high frequency combo to this line, which we're blocking the river folds from. So I'd be looking to mostly bluff lower spades on this run out. Or just, I think the ace of spades is a bad one here.
Yeah, that's fair.
I do think...
Go on.
Well, I do think you will get a fair amount of folds here, regardless of the blocking effects, because I think your opponent will just end up with a lot of weak hands, just based on the pre-flop range, and which they might mix a bunch of pure folds, or not mix pure folds, but they might have a bunch of pure folds in their range, and so bluffing just might be an effective play. Again, if fours through deuces are in their range, that's a bunch of kind of sweet combos that you're really likely to bluff, because all the ones with a spade are going to be forced check calls in the turn, just due to equity. And then I think the 5x is going to want to fold on this river, because they figure a bunch of your bluffs improve on the 6, and it's an overcard, and they're just kind of done. So, yeah, I don't hate... I just like bluffing in general against lower stakes players, so I'm enthusiastic about finding lots of bluffs. But I think this is kind of a tier 2 bluffing candidate.
Yeah. I expect that we're probably going to get here with quite a few queen 10 with a spade type hands and maybe king 10, king queen with a spade type hands as well, which just is a lot of combos. So I'm not sure if I do bluff this river, but I can definitely get behind giving this up.
You beat those though.
Sorry, I mean, in our range, we might delay c-bet the turn with those combos, which certainly means if we're also bluffing this on the river, we are getting here with a fairly high chunk of bluffs, potentially.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, all those hands, all those single spade hands, and just all those different hands are mixing so much in the flop and on the turn that I think that the frequency of bluffs we get to the river with is largely determined either by our reads or if we've misconstructed a range on a previous street, and that might even be opaque to us, and I think definitely opaque to our opponent. I don't think they're going to be oh, I bet he rolled 80s on the first 2 streets with these hands, so I'm gonna that'd be pretty technical, I think, and very precise. Okay, let's see what happens. I guess the last thing I want to say about this hand is that I do think there's some showdown value here, particularly against weaker opponents. Sometimes as your opponents get stronger, you can make stronger assumptions about what their ranges are going to be constructed as. And I think it's plausible that this player could just have Queen of Spades 10 on the turn. Like, I don't think they do, but like, I would guess that a lower stakes opponent who's likely to be less precise than a higher stakes opponent is going to have that at a higher frequency, and you get a little extra bonus from checking behind hands with showdown value, or like that might have showdown value against like a misconstructed turn range.
Okay, so I think what I just did there is I just checked his went to showdown stat, which looked quite low. So I think I bluffed this in the end, actually.
Okay.
I think I might remember bluffing this, but yeah, that's what I just did then.
I also think overbet's a plausible. You could overbet this combo if you wanted. I'm kind of scared of the 6 on the river once we start overbetting, just because I think 6s is like just always playing this line, like both pre-flop and on the turn. And so I just think they have like 100% weight in 6s, and they obviously have no river leads. So it's like we're kind of free-rolling them. Like, I don't know how much of their range is exactly pocket 6s by the river, but I would guess it's like, 7% or something. So
yeah.
Like, once we start getting in the overbet range, it's like, oh, like, yeah, it's just can get a little dicey.
Just on overbetting in general, I think that people are also pretty, like, as a meta, like, quite stationary against polarized ranges at the moment.
Okay. Nice hand.
So I might be swayed away from that in this exact spot when we rep kind of thin with the flop check back in their eyes, potentially.
Yeah, I get that.